Hello everyone. So these past 2 weeks I've been trying to support someone who is both severely physically disabled and has chronic lifelong mental health disabilities, and who is currently experiencing a crisis, a severe crisis. They are dealing with a extreme bout of wanting to unalive themselves. Now, we live in an area where our mental health care provider is the subject of a statutory public inquiry at the moment, which is not helpful. And the week before last, as we fought with the local hospital via the A&E unit, we said, is it because there are no beds that you won't help her? And they said, no, it's got nothing to do with the lack of beds. This week, it's been made perfectly clear that the reason that there's no real help available is because there are no beds. Now, here's the thing. If somebody is a danger to themselves and others, but in this case it's just she's just a danger to herself, clearly expressing the methods by which they want to unalive themselves, clearly expressing that they feel that the only agency that she now has is over whether she lives or dies, then she should either be sectioned for her own safety or informally admitted, that is, admitted by her own consent. That's the law. Except there are no beds. There are no beds. There are not enough beds in our area in the 2 mental health units to deal with the population and to answer the needs when they arise. Now, coupled with that is the fact that she is on a waiting list, an urgent waiting list for psychotherapy. This urgent waiting list has a minimum wait time of 12 months, and her current crisis will not speed up the time in which she is seen for the psychotherapy that she urgently requires. And a very big part of the problem is the mental health disability that she has, and the fact that it is lifelong and requires lifelong medical and psychotherapeutic support. Not to say the huge amount of prejudice that people with this mental health disability face from mental health care providers, medical health care providers, social care providers, and the general public. in part because of the terminology that's used for it, which is victim blaming and deeply inaccurate, extremely inaccurate and very victim blaming, and in part because of some of the symptoms that go along with it. The mental health disability to which I refer was formerly called BPD, borderline personality disorder. That was then changed to EUPD, emotionally unstable personality disorder. Both of those terms are hugely victim blaming and wrong. After the last couple of weeks, which have been, to say the least, demoralising and frustrating, most especially for the person that I'm advocating for, we decided to try and understand on a deeper level just what's going on, why it's so hard to get mental health care providers to help people with this disability, help women, because it's particularly women who suffer from the prejudice with this, and how we break the cycle of the prejudice and the lack of support that goes with it. Now, the person that I'm advocating for also has autism. It is also autistic, sorry, like myself. She's very justice sensitive. She is a very good researcher, and she knows where. Sorry, brief interruption for a drink there. So the person that I'm advocating for knows where therapists hang out and chat with each other, the forums. So she's been looking and chatting with them there to try and get a better grasp of their thought processes. And one of the things that she's realised is that just as doctors don't like treating chronic conditions because there's no cure to give them the whole "I cured you" high, the same thing applies with mental health. Conditions that can't be cured are not sexy enough, if you get my drift. If there's no cure, then there's nothing to give you extra status as a caregiver, doctor, nurse. There's nothing to build your professional reputation from, because there's nothing to cure. There's only helping to maintain, helping to deal with, helping to manage, helping to, Now, quite some time ago, we were very clear that the terminology to describe condition and its symptoms had to change because of how it victim blamed, because it didn't address the fact that this is a childhood trauma injury. That's literally what it is. What happens is that when a child experiences a trauma or a series of traumas, the hormones required to regulate emotion are stripped from the body. And that means that it's like you turn the dial up on the record player, and then the volume on the record player or the stereo, and then you snap the button off at that point so that it can only ever play at that volume. And people with the condition exist with their emotions either at full blast or fully introverted. I've been a carer for people with this my entire life. So I know only too well that this is the person with it. It's not their fault that they have it. It's not their fault that they can't control their emotions. Afterwards, after the storm of emotion has passed, the guilt, the incredible amount of guilt that they feel, is a lot of where the massive amount of depression and suicidality comes from. And it is the mental health condition with the highest level of not just suicidal ideation, but actual amount of attempts on their own lives. I lost my sister to it. She died before the first wave of quetiapine hit the market. Quetiapine is a drug that was developed for the condition. It's one of the few. It is helpful. So whilst we were discussing, we thought about a better terminology for the symptoms. And quite some time ago we came up with PTECI, post-traumatic emotional control impairment. And that is a better way of describing the symptoms, because that's exactly what it is. In the same way as PTSD, post-control, that post-traumatic PTSD. Similarly, post-traumatic emotional control impairment that's what that describes the symptoms pretty much exactly. But it doesn't describe the origin or the people it affects. And a few nights ago, the person that I'm supporting came up with the acronym to describe the people it affects. ASCAN. adult survivors of childhood abuse and neglect. So that's the first one. That's the one that has to come first, because that is the one that clearly identifies the people it affects and why they are affected. And that has to come first, because we need the mental health care providers to remember why the people they are treating have the condition that they do. And maybe the mental health care providers will find more compassion for the people that they're treating. And then it's PTECI to describe the symptoms: post-traumatic emotional control impairment, like post-traumatic stress disorder. Post-traumatic emotional control impairment just describes the symptoms, but the important one, ASCAN, comes first. Adult survivors of childhood abuse and neglect. Because that's why people have those symptoms. And yes, some of the symptoms involve socially unacceptable emotional outbursts. But that's because they were abused and neglected to such an extent that they can no longer naturally control their own emotions. So they will always require, for the rest of their lives, both medical and psychotherapeutic support in order to help them do that. In the same way that somebody who can't walk needs a wheelchair. It's a mental health disability, and it is deserving of compassion because it is a childhood trauma injury. And mental health care providers, medical care providers, and social care providers need to learn compassion and need to put away the prejudice that they have that is systemic in those institutions. That has to end. Because we are tired of it as a care provider for survivors. But most especially for those survivors, the prejudice has to stop. And new terminology is required to help that and bring about an end to that prejudice. And I am so proud of my friend that in the middle of a crisis that is tearing them apart, they came up with that. They spoke to, on forums, they spoke to people, and they thought that through and came up with that to try and help others like them, to try and help others like her. because the prejudice has to stop. Adult survivors of childhood abuse and neglect, whose symptoms can be described as PTECI, post-traumatic emotional control impairment. Have a lovely day, lovely, lovely people.